A secret admirer kept leaving me gifts, always at the perfect time. An umbrella on rainy days, warm meals after brutal shifts, flowers just when I needed them most. For months, I couldn't stop thinking about this mysterious person who seemed to know exactly what I needed, and when. But I never imagined the truth would be more heartwarming than any love story I could dream of. Before we uncover the mystery, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories every day. Now, let's go back to my small, lonely apartment building in Chicago. Moving to Chicago at 26 to work as a nurse felt like the adventure I had always wanted. After finishing nursing school in small-town Iowa, I was ready to make a difference, to save lives, to build the meaningful career I'd dreamed of. But I hadn't realized how lonely that dream could be. My life had become a loop of exhaustion. 12-hour shifts at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, a 20-minute commute home to my tiny studio apartment, and maybe 6 hours of sleep before doing it all again. I worked in the cardiac ICU, where every day was a fight between life and death, where families cried in waiting rooms, and miracles felt rare but unforgettable. The building I lived in was quiet, filled with people I barely knew. We were like ghosts, polite smiles, tired nods, no real connection. Across the hall lived an elderly man, tall, thin, silver-haired. He always wore cardigans and moved carefully, like someone used to being unnoticed. We'd only ever exchanged a soft, good morning. My days blended together, medical charts, beeping monitors, and the constant weight of other people's pain. I'd come home, heat a frozen meal, and fall asleep on the couch halfway through Netflix. No social life, no friends outside of work. I was living my dream, and yet I felt completely alone. Then one Tuesday in October, everything changed. I had just finished a brutal 16-hour shift, 2 patients lost, 1 saved. My body was running on caffeine and sheer willpower. Mrs. Patterson, a 73-year-old grandmother, had coded twice that day. We brought her back both times, but I could see the pain and exhaustion in her family's eyes. Her daughter gripped my hand and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for her." I nodded, too choked up to reply. Dragging myself up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, I felt the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. The hallway light flickered weakly, and the only sound came from a distant TV. That's when I saw it, a small paper bag sitting by my door, with my name written neatly on it in old-fashioned blue ink, Taylor Mitchell. Inside was a warm turkey sandwich wrapped in wax paper, a container of homemade chicken noodle soup, and a note that read, "Thank you for all you do. The world is better because of people like you. A friend." I looked up and down the empty hallway. No one was there. The soup was still steaming, which meant whoever left it knew exactly when I'd get home. I ate standing in my kitchen, too tired to sit, and for the first time in weeks I felt seen. The gifts kept coming, small, thoughtful, perfectly timed. After a heartbreaking shift where we lost a young father, I found a bouquet of sunflowers outside my door. The note said, "For bringing light to dark places, your compassion makes a difference." Sunflowers, my mother's favorite, something I'd never told anyone in Chicago. A week later, during endless October rain, I found an umbrella leaning against my door. The note said, "Stay dry, the world needs you healthy." And once again, it appeared on the exact morning I realized I'd left mine at work. A thermos of soup after a missed meal. A soft blanket when the building's heat went out. A small potted plant with the message, "Bring life to small spaces." Each gift felt like it came from someone who understood exactly what a nurse goes through. The exhaustion, the heartbreak, the quiet moments when all you need is a little kindness. I became obsessed with finding out who it was. Who knew my schedule, my struggles, my worst days? My first guess was Marcus, the hospital's night security guard, kind, fatherly, always checking in after tough shifts. When I asked him, he looked surprised. "That's really sweet, Taylor," he said. "But I've never heard of anyone doing that. You think someone's got a crush on you." I had thought about that, but these gifts weren't romantic. They felt nurturing, like something a parent or close friend would do. Next, I suspected Dr. Peterson, our attending physician. He was single, kind, and always had the right words during hard cases. When I asked, he smiled and said, "Sounds like you've got a guardian angel, but it's not me, though I wish I'd thought of it." Even my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, crossed my mind, a retired teacher who always noticed how tired I looked. When I asked if she'd seen anyone leaving packages, she smiled. "No, dear, but that doesn't sound like romance. That sounds like care, like family." I tried everything, changing my schedule, waiting in the stairwell, even asking the building superintendent. No one ever saw anything. The gifts appeared only when I was gone, always perfectly timed, always filled with care. Part of me wanted to install a camera, but something about that felt wrong. Whoever this was, they were giving from the heart, not for recognition, not for attention. Filming them felt like breaking that trust. None of the gifts were expensive, but every one of them was meaningful and deeply personal. Whoever it was, they understood. Then, one November evening, after one of the hardest weeks I'd ever had 3 patients gone in just 2 days, I came home to find a small leather-bound journal waiting outside my door. The note attached to the journal was longer than usual. It read, "For your thoughts, your worries, your hopes. Sometimes writing them down makes them easier to carry. You are making a difference, even when it doesn't feel like it. Every life you touch is better because of your care." I sat on my couch that night, holding the journal in my hands, and for the first time since moving to Chicago, I cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being seen, of being cared for by someone who understood exactly what I needed to hear. The week had been devastating. We'd lost Mr. Garcia, a 45-year-old construction worker with 3 young children. Mrs. Williams, a grandmother who had been planning her granddaughter's wedding. And Tommy, a 19-year-old college student with an undiagnosed heart condition. Each loss hit deeply. Each one made me question whether I was strong enough for this job, whether I was even making a difference at all. And somehow, my mysterious friend had known exactly what I needed: permission to feel, a place to pour my thoughts, and a reminder that my work mattered. That's when I decided I had to find out who it was. Not to confront them, but to thank them, to let them know how deeply their kindness had touched me. I began watching more carefully, the timing, the patterns, the details I might have missed before. Then, one snowy December evening, everything fell into place. I just finished an 18-hour double shift. We were short-staffed, the ER was overflowing, and everything that could go wrong had gone wrong: equipment failures, difficult families, and a young mother who'd collapsed while Christmas shopping. Climbing the stairs to my apartment, every step felt heavier than the last. Then I heard it, a soft click of a door closing somewhere above me. It was unusual. By that hour, most of my neighbors were asleep. The sound was careful, almost secretive. My heart raced as I quickened my pace. Maybe this was it. Maybe I'd finally see who it was. When I reached my floor, the hallway was empty. But then I noticed something I'd never seen before: a faint glow of light beneath the door of the apartment across from mine. The quiet, elderly man's apartment. And then I smelled it, the unmistakable aroma of turkey and fresh bread. The same comforting scent that had clung to that very first sandwich months ago. I froze in place. The pieces clicked together: the timing, the understanding of a nurse's life, the careful handwriting, the quiet kindness. My mysterious benefactor wasn't a romantic admirer. He wasn't a colleague or a stranger watching from afar. He was right across the hall, the man I passed every morning with a polite smile, the man I'd barely noticed. The next morning, I made a decision that would change both of our lives. Instead of heading straight to work, I stopped at the bakery down the street and bought 2 coffees and a box of pastries. Then I walked across the hall and knocked on his door, my heart pounding with nervous anticipation. The door opened slowly. The man standing there was exactly who I expected, and yet completely different from what I'd imagined. He was tall, thin, probably in his late 70s, with kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore a cardigan over a crisp white shirt. When he saw me standing there, holding the coffee and pastries, a mix of emotions flickered across his face: surprise, recognition, and a hint of embarrassment. "Mister," I began, realizing I didn't even know his name. "Harold," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly but filled with warmth. "Harold Whitman." "Harold," I repeated, smiling. "I'm Taylor. I live across the hall." "I know who you are," he said, and after a pause that seemed to carry the weight of months of quiet kindness, he added, "I suppose you've figured it out." I held up the coffee and pastries. "Would you like to talk about it?" He hesitated for a moment, maybe afraid he'd crossed a line, or that I was angry. Then, with a small nod, he stepped aside and invited me in. His apartment was the mirror image of mine, but it felt like another world, warm, lived in, full of history. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with worn volumes. Comfortable furniture surrounded a small table, and every corner held photographs, most of them of a woman with gentle eyes and a soft smile. She appeared in different stages of life, young, middle-aged, older, but always with the same warmth shining through. In several photos, she wore a nurse's uniform. "That's Margaret," Harold said, noticing my gaze. "My wife." His voice softened. "She passed away 2 years ago." We sat at his small kitchen table. I poured the coffee while he carefully arranged the pastries, his hands trembling slightly but steady with purpose. "She was a nurse," he continued, pride and grief intertwined in his tone. "Worked at Presbyterian Hospital for 37 years. Cardiac unit, just like you." Suddenly, it all made sense. "You've been watching me," I said gently, not accusing, but understanding. Harold nodded, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup as if drawing strength from it. "Not watching," he said quietly. "Just noticing. You keep the same schedule Margaret used to keep. You come home with the same exhaustion in your eyes. You carry the same weight she once did." He smiled faintly. "So I decided to take care of you." Then, after a pause, he corrected himself softly. "No, I decided to honor her." He looked toward the photos on the wall. "Margaret used to say nurses are the unsung heroes of the world. They give everything they have to strangers and rarely get anything back. She always wanted someone to take care of them, the way they care for everyone else." He stood and took a small framed photo from the shelf, a picture of a young woman in scrubs, tired but smiling. She looked so much like me, not in face, but in spirit. "When I saw you move in," Harold said, "leaving for work in your scrubs, coming home late, looking just like Margaret did, it felt like a sign. Like maybe I could do for you what I wished someone had done for her." Tears filled my eyes. "Harold, you don't even know me." He smiled, his voice steady now. "I know enough. I know you work double shifts when the unit's short-staffed. I know you cry in the stairwell sometimes after the bad days. I know you eat cereal for dinner because you're too tired to cook. I know you're a good person doing important work in a world that doesn't always notice." "How do you know all that?" I asked. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him, and it completely transformed his face. "Thin walls," he said softly, a trace of humor in his voice, "and an old man who doesn't sleep much anymore. Plus, Margaret taught me to recognize the signs. The way you hold your shoulders after a loss, the way you move when you're running on empty, the way you pause outside your door before going in like you're gathering strength for whatever comes next." He stood, walked to a small desk in the corner, and returned with a worn notebook. Its pages were filled with neat, careful handwriting. "I started keeping track," he said, handing it to me. "Not in a creepy way, just the way Margaret used to keep track of her young nurses. She said it helped her remember who needed extra encouragement, who was having a hard time, who might just need a kind word or a small gesture. I flipped through the pages, and my breath caught. November 15, worked 18 hours, looked exhausted, left soup. November 22, heard crying in hallway after shift, left flowers and encouraging note. December 3, hasn't been grocery shopping in a week, probably living on cafeteria food, left homemade meal. It wasn't invasive, it wasn't strange. It was love in action. Documented with the quiet precision of someone who understood that caring for others required intention and effort. Margaret kept a notebook like this, Harold continued. She said experienced nurses often forgot what it felt like to be new, to be overwhelmed, to feel like you were drowning in responsibility. She made it her mission to look out for them. And that's when I realized Harold hadn't just been honoring his wife's memory. He'd been continuing her work, extending her legacy of compassion to a new generation. I hope I didn't overstep, he said gently, closing the notebook. I know it might seem strange, an old man leaving gifts for a young woman he doesn't really know, but it wasn't inappropriate, I promise. I just missed taking care of someone. I missed being useful. I reached across the table and touched his weathered hand. Harold, I whispered, it's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever done for me. You have no idea how much those small acts helped me through the hardest days. His eyes filled with tears. Margaret would have liked you, he said. She'd say you have the heart of a true nurse. She always knew which ones were in it for the right reasons. I would have liked to meet her, I said softly, looking around at the photos that filled his apartment like a quiet shrine to a life well lived. You would have, he smiled. She had a way of making everyone feel seen, valued. She used to come home and tell me about the young nurses who reminded her of herself when she was starting out. She worried about them, whether they were eating, sleeping, taking care of themselves while they took care of everyone else. That conversation became the beginning of the most unexpected and precious friendship of my life. Harold and I started having coffee together on my days off. He told me stories about Margaret, about their life, their love, and the lessons she'd taught him about caring for others. Their love story sounded like something out of a novel. He had been a young accountant, and she a nursing student when they met. He'd been in the hospital after a car accident, and she was assigned to his care. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, he said once, eyes twinkling. But it wasn't just her looks. It was the way she made people feel like they mattered. They were married for 52 years, before Margaret passed away from cancer. Harold had cared for her himself during her final months, learning to give medications, manage her pain, and provide the same gentle care she had given to so many. She taught me that caring isn't about the big gestures, he said. It's about noticing the small things, anticipating needs, being present in the quiet moments that matter most. In return, I brought new life into his world. I helped him set up a computer so he could video chat with his grandchildren. I introduced him to streaming shows, old black and white movies he'd loved for decades. And I filled his home with new stories from the hospital, victories, heartbreaks, and the messy, beautiful reality of caring for others. We took care of each other. Harold still left me small gifts, not as a mysterious admirer, but as a friend. A bowl of soup when I worked too long, groceries when my fridge was empty, watered plants when I forgot. And I cared for him, too, checking on him when he was sick, helping him organize his medications, making sure he didn't spend too much time lost in memories. Sometimes, I'd bring him to the hospital's family events. He became everyone's favorite guest, charming my colleagues with stories about Margaret and the golden age of nursing. Before long, he was our unit's honorary grandfather. He'd show up to holiday parties with homemade cookies and wisdom that made us laugh and cry all at once. He was a bridge between what nursing was and what it still is, a reminder that compassion never goes out of style. You know, my coworker Sarah said after one Christmas party, he talks about you the way my grandpa talks about me, like you're the most precious thing in the world. And she was right. Harold had become family. He celebrated my victories, comforted me in my failures, and gave me the kind of unconditional support I hadn't realized I was missing since I'd moved away from home. 6 months after our first coffee together, Harold showed me something that truly broke me open. He pulled a small box from his closet, filled with letters and cards. "All from nurses who worked with Margaret," he said, handing me one. Each letter told the same story, about how Margaret's kindness had changed their lives, how she'd encouraged them not to quit, reminded them why they started, or simply listened when no one else did. "I realized after she died," Harold said, his voice trembling, "that her legacy wasn't just in the patients she saved. It was in the nurses she mentored, the women she helped become the caregivers they were meant to be. And I thought maybe I could keep that alive in my own small way." On the anniversary of Margaret's death, we visited her grave together. He brought sunflowers, the same kind he'd left outside my door that first night. And I brought a letter, one I'd written to her. I thanked her for raising a man who knew how to see people. A man who understood that sometimes the smallest kindness can save a life, in ways medicine never could. "She would have been so proud," Harold whispered, eyes on her headstone. "She always said the best way to honor a nurse was to take care of another nurse." As we walked back home that day, snow beginning to fall around us, I realized something. That mysterious admirer hadn't just left me gifts. He'd given me proof that kindness still exists, that people do notice when you're struggling, and that love, in its purest form, doesn't always come wrapped in romance. Sometimes it comes in a bowl of soup. A kind note. A stranger's quiet understanding. I had moved to Chicago searching for purpose. What I found instead was something I hadn't even known I was missing. A reminder that the smallest acts of care can change a life forever. A reminder that we're all connected. That taking care of each other is what makes us human. And that sometimes the most beautiful relationships begin with a simple act of anonymous kindness. Harold still leaves me gifts, but now they come with his name on them. And usually, an invitation to share them together. And I've started leaving gifts for him, too. Books I think he'll enjoy, photos from my travels. Small tokens that quietly say, "I see you, I value you, I'm grateful for you." Our friendship taught me something I'll never forget. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's an elderly widower who notices your exhaustion and decides to ease it, one small act of kindness at a time. Sometimes, family is the person who quietly helps you carry your burdens. Without fanfare, without expectation. Just because they care. The mystery of my secret admirer had been solved. But the real gift, the gift of Harold's friendship, continues every single day. He's taught me that the most powerful force in the world isn't medicine, or technology, or wealth. It's kindness. The simple human impulse to notice someone's pain and to respond with love. And in caring for me, Harold found something too. His own healing. He discovered that grief doesn't have to be the end of love. That honoring someone's memory can be a living, breathing act. We are an unlikely pair, a 78-year-old widower and a 26-year-old nurse. But together, we've built something beautiful. A friendship born from loss, sustained by compassion, and proof that love can take many forms. The gifts still appear outside my door. But now I know where they come from. And more importantly, I know why. They come from love. Not romantic love, but something deeper. Something that lasts. Because in the end, caring for others, truly seeing them, is what gives life its meaning. What a beautiful reminder that love never really dies. It just finds new ways to express itself. Harold's story shows us that even the smallest gestures can change someone's entire world. What do you think about Harold's way of caring for Taylor? Have you ever experienced, or given, an anonymous act of kindness? Let us know in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories every day. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Thank you for watching. And remember, kindness is the truest form of love. Yellow heart.